The day I told them I lost everything, they vanished like I didn't exist. But they didn't know I'd sold my company for $12.5 million. So I sat back and watched them expose exactly who they really were. My name is Eleanor Mitchell, and I'm 72 years old. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city and state in the comments below. What I'm about to share with you is the most painful yet liberating experience of my life, and it taught me that sometimes the people closest to you are only there for what you can give them. For 43 years, I built something I was proud of. Mitchell & Associates wasn't just a marketing consulting firm, it was my legacy. I started it in 1982 with nothing but a typewriter, a phone line, and an idea that small businesses deserved the same quality marketing strategies as the big corporations. My late husband Richard believed in me when no one else did. He took a second mortgage on our house so I could rent my first office space. Richard passed away 8 years ago, and losing him nearly broke me. But the business kept me going. It gave me purpose. It gave me identity. And over the decades, it had grown into something remarkable. We had 75 employees, offices in 3 states, and a client roster that would make any firm envious. I'd poured my heart, my time, and my money into building something that would last. But what I didn't expect was how that success would change the people around me. My daughter, Jessica, was 46. She lived in a beautiful home in Connecticut that, I'm not ashamed to admit, I helped her buy. Her husband Mark worked in finance, but they'd hit some rough patches over the years. Whenever they needed help, whether it was $20,000 for a new roof or $15,000 when Mark was between jobs, I was there. That's what mothers do. You help your children. My son Daniel was 43, living in California with his wife Amy. Daniel had always been my dreamer. He'd gone through 6 different business ventures, and I'd invested in every single one of them. A restaurant that closed after a year, an app that never launched, a consulting business that never found clients. Each time, I wrote the check and told him I believed in him, because I did. He was my son. Then there was my sister, Patricia, just a year younger than me. We'd been close our whole lives, or so I thought. She'd never had my business sense, and her husband Tom had retired early from the post office with a modest pension. They lived comfortably, but not extravagantly. Over the years, I'd paid for their vacations, helped with their medical bills, and given them money whenever they asked. Family takes care of family. That's what I believed. My best friend of 38 years, Caroline, rounded out my inner circle. We'd met at a business women's networking event in the 80s and had been inseparable ever since. Weekly lunches, holiday celebrations, hours on the phone talking about everything and nothing. I'd helped her through her divorce, supported her when her son was in rehab, and yes, I'd lent her money more times than I could count. She always said she'd pay me back. I never asked for it. These were my people, my family, my support system. Or at least, that's what I thought they were. 2 years ago, I started getting serious offers for my company. Tech firms wanted to acquire our client relationships and expertise. Private equity groups saw the value in our decades of goodwill and proven systems. At first, I dismissed them all. Mitchell & Associates was my baby. How could I sell something that had been my entire adult life? But then I started thinking about age, about mortality, about what I really wanted from my remaining years. Richard and I had always dreamed of traveling the world, but we'd put it off, always telling ourselves we'd do it later. Well, later never came for him, and I was 70 years old, still working 60-hour weeks, still stressed about payroll and client retention and market competition. So when Meridian Solutions came to me with an offer of $12.3 million, I listened, really listened. They wanted our brand, our systems, our client relationships, and our talented team. They'd keep everyone employed and even offered me a consulting role if I wanted it. It was everything I could have hoped for. The negotiations took 4 months. I didn't tell anyone. Not Jessica, not Daniel, not Patricia, not Caroline. I hired attorneys they didn't know, met in offices across town, kept everything confidential. Something in my gut told me to keep it quiet, though I didn't fully understand why at the time. The final sale price was $12.5 million. After taxes and fees, I'd walk away with just under $9 million. $9 million at 70 years old. I could live like a queen, travel the world, never worry about money again. But before I signed those papers, something happened that changed everything. It was a Sunday dinner at my house. I'd invited everyone over, something I did once a month. Jessica and Mark, Daniel and Amy, Patricia and Tom and Caroline. 7 people I loved more than anything in the world gathered around the dining table I'd inherited from my mother. The conversation somehow turned to money. Mark was complaining about his bonus being smaller than expected. Amy mentioned how expensive California had become. Patricia was worried about their property taxes going up. And Caroline brought up something about her car needing repairs she couldn't afford. Then Jessica said something that made me go cold. "Well, Mom will help out. She always does. That's what the family bank is for, right?" She laughed when she said it, but it wasn't a warm laugh. It was casual, expectant, entitled. "The family bank," Daniel echoed, raising his wine glass. "Thank God for Mom's success, right?" They all laughed, all of them. Even Caroline, who wasn't family by blood but apparently felt entitled to be part of the joke. I sat there at the head of my own table, and something crystallized in my mind with painful clarity. I wasn't Eleanor to them. I wasn't a mother, a sister, a friend. I was an ATM machine, a resource to be tapped, a solution to their financial problems. That night, after everyone left, I sat in my study until 3 a.m. I thought about every loan I'd given, every crisis I'd solved with my checkbook, every time someone had called me and the conversation had somehow turned to money before we hung up. And I realized I had no idea who these people really were, beneath their need for my financial support. Would Jessica call me if I couldn't help with her mortgage? Would Daniel visit if I couldn't fund his next business dream? Would Patricia and I still be close if I couldn't pay for us to vacation together? Would Caroline still be my best friend without my generous loans that we both knew would never be repaid? I needed to know. I needed to see who they really were. So I made a decision, a painful, calculated decision. I would conduct a test, I would tell them I'd lost everything, and I would see what happened. 3 weeks later, I signed the papers selling Mitchell and Associates. The money hit my account on a Tuesday morning, $12.5 million minus taxes and fees. It was real, it was done, and nobody knew. That same week, I called a family meeting. I told everyone it was urgent. They all came to my house that Saturday afternoon, and I could see the concern on their faces when they arrived. Good, I thought. Let them be concerned. Let's see where that concern really leads. "I have something to tell you all," I said once everyone was seated in my living room. I'd practiced this speech in my mirror for days. I needed to sell it. I needed them to believe it. "I've lost the company. Mitchell and Associates is gone." The room went silent. Jessica's face went pale. Daniel leaned forward. Patricia grabbed Tom's hand. "What do you mean, gone?" Mark asked, always the first to focus on the financial implications. "I made some bad investments over the past 2 years," I said, each word tasting like ash in my mouth. "Clients I trusted turned out to be running fraudulent operations. When they went down, they took me with them. The lawsuits have been devastating. I've lost the business, and I'm facing significant personal liability." I watched their faces carefully. Shock, disbelief. And yes, I saw it, fear. But was it fear for me or fear for themselves? "How bad is it?" Daniel asked. "I'm going to lose the house," I said. "I'll have to declare bankruptcy. My retirement accounts are being seized. I have maybe $50,000 left to my name, and most of that will go to legal fees." "But you've always been so careful," Caroline said, her voice shaking. "How did this happen?" I gave them a story about a major client, about investments that seemed legitimate, about how sophisticated the fraud had been. I'd done my research. The story was believable. The details were solid. "I'm going to have to downsize significantly," I continued. "I'm looking at small apartments. I'll need to watch every penny. I'm just grateful I have my health and that Richard isn't here to see this." I waited for the comfort, for the assurances, for someone to say, "We're here for you," or "We'll get through this together," or "You've helped us so much. Now let us help you." Nobody said any of those things. Jessica spoke first. "Mom, we can't take on your problems. We have our own mortgage to worry about, the kids' college funds." "I'm not asking you to take on anything," I said quietly. "I just wanted you to know what's happening." "Well, this changes things," Mark interjected. "We were actually going to ask if you could help us with a new car. Jessica's has been making that noise, but obviously that's off the table now." I felt something crack inside my chest, but I kept my face neutral. Obviously. Daniel and Amy exchanged glances. "Mom, we just committed to a new lease in Santa Monica. We were counting on you for the security deposit. We already told the landlord we could cover it." "I'm sorry, Daniel. I can't help with that." His face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "This is really terrible timing, Mom. You know Amy's been wanting to start her interior design business. We've been planning for months, assuming you'd invest like you always do." Assuming. That word hung in the air like poison gas. Patricia and Tom were whispering to each other. Finally, Patricia looked up. "Eleanor, I don't know what to say. This is a shock. We were supposed to go on that cruise next month, the one you were paying for." "I can't do that anymore, Patricia. I'm sorry." Her face tightened. "Well, Tom and I certainly can't afford it on our own. I suppose we'll have to cancel." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "How can we support you?" Just disappointment about a canceled vacation. Caroline hadn't said much. She sat on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped tightly. "Eleanor, the $5,000 you lent me last month, you'll still need that back?" "Eventually, yes. But I understand if you can't pay it right away." Her expression shifted into something almost resentful. "I mean, you said it wasn't a big deal. You said to take my time." That was before my entire life fell apart, Caroline. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. There were awkward hugs, murmured condolences, promises to talk soon and figure things out. But I could see the calculation behind their eyes. I could see them already pulling away, already deciding that Eleanor without money wasn't the same person as Eleanor with money. They all left within 15 minutes of each other. And then I was alone in my big house with my secret $9 million and the devastating knowledge of who my family really was. The next few weeks confirmed everything I'd feared. Jessica called once 3 days after the meeting. The conversation lasted 8 minutes. She asked how I was holding up in a tone that suggested she was checking a box on a to-do list. When I said I was struggling, there was a pause, and then she said, "Well, you're strong, Mom. You'll figure it out. Listen, I have to run, soccer practice." She didn't call again after that. When I tried calling her, the conversations got shorter and shorter. "Busy with work. The kids are crazy right now. Can I call you back?" She never did. Daniel was more direct. He sent me an email. It said he was disappointed that I'd mismanaged my finances so badly and that he hoped I'd learn from this experience. He also mentioned that he and Amy had decided to take some space because the energy around the family wasn't healthy right now. The energy wasn't healthy. My son reduced my supposed financial devastation to bad energy. Patricia stopped answering my calls entirely. After the 4th attempt, Tom finally picked up. "Listen, Eleanor, Patricia is really hurt about the cruise. She'd been looking forward to it for months. She needs some time." "Tom, I lost everything. Doesn't she understand that?" "Well, maybe you should have been more careful. Patricia and I have always been responsible with our money. We don't understand how someone could just lose everything like that." He said it like I'd been reckless, like I'd gambled it away. There was no compassion in his voice, only judgment. Caroline met me for coffee once, 2 weeks after the announcement. She spent the entire time talking about her own problems, her sister's drama, her dental work, her car troubles. When I tried to talk about what I was going through, she nodded absently and checked her phone. The coffee lasted 37 minutes, and she insisted we split the bill. She'd never suggested splitting the bill in 38 years of friendship. She texted me a few days later saying she thought it was best if we gave each other space for a while. She never specified how long a while meant. But I want you to pause right here and hit that subscribe button because you need to hear how this story ends. Trust me, justice is coming. By week 4, I hadn't heard from any of them, not a single call, not a text. It was as if I died and nobody had bothered to attend the funeral. I'd sit in my study some evenings and stare at my bank account, $9 million. I could fix all their problems with a tiny fraction of that money. Jessica's car, Daniel's security deposit, Patricia's cruise, Caroline's $5,000. All of it would be pocket change to me now. But that wasn't the point anymore. The point was that I'd learned the truth. When I had money, I had a family. When I didn't, I had nothing. My 71st birthday came 6 weeks after my announcement. I spent it alone. Nobody called, nobody texted, nobody sent a card. My birthday had always been a big celebration. Dinner at my favorite restaurant, everyone together, cake and laughter and Jessica's kids running around. This year? Nothing. Silence. I sat in my house, in the life I'd built, surrounded by photos of people who'd abandoned me, and I felt something shift inside my chest. The hurt was still there, sharp as ever. But something else was there too. Clarity, purpose, resolve. They'd made their choice. Now I would make mine. I spent the next 3 months planning. I hired a private investigator, which felt dramatic, but I needed to know everything. What were they saying about me? How were they living? What was the truth of their lives without my support? The reports came back, and they were enlightening. Jessica and Mark were struggling, but not because of the car or the roof or any real emergency. They were struggling because they lived beyond their means and had always used me as a financial cushion. Without that cushion, they were having to make actual budgetary decisions, and they resented it. The investigator heard Jessica at a school function telling another mother that she was so stressed because her mom had become financially irresponsible. Financially irresponsible. Her words for my supposed devastation. Daniel hadn't committed to any lease in Santa Monica. That was a lie. He and Amy were living in the same apartment they'd been in for 2 years. The business opportunity Amy needed investment for didn't exist. They'd wanted money because they'd always gotten money, and they'd invented a reason to ask for it. Patricia and Tom had gone on the cruise anyway. They'd found the money somewhere, and they were posting photos on Facebook. Tropical drinks, sunset dinners, smiling selfies. The cruise I was supposed to pay for that my sister was so hurt about canceling had happened just fine without me. And Caroline? Caroline had paid off a credit card with the $5,000 I'd lent her, then immediately ran it up again, buying things she didn't need. According to the investigator, she'd told several people that I'd finally shown my true colors, and she was glad she found out what kind of person I really was. What kind of person I was. Let that sink in. These reports didn't make me angry. Anger would have been too simple, too clean. What I felt was grief, deep, aching grief for relationships that had apparently never existed the way I'd thought they did. I'd loved these people with everything I had. I'd supported them, believed in them, been there for them. And the moment I couldn't be their bank anymore, I became invisible. But grief can be clarifying, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. I planned it for Thanksgiving. The optics were perfect. I sent out invitations in October from my email address. The subject line read, "Eleanor Mitchell requests your presence for Thanksgiving dinner." Formal. Unlike my usual casual family emails. But they didn't notice or didn't care. Only Caroline responded saying she had other plans. The family didn't respond at all. I followed up with individual emails. "It would mean a lot to me if you came," I wrote to each of them. "I have something important I need to share." That got their attention. Jessica called. "Mom, is everything okay? Are you sick?" So I only mattered if I was dying. Good to know. "I'm fine," I said. I just need to talk to everyone together. It's important. Is this about money? Because we really can't help financially right now. Things are tight for us too. It's not about me needing money, Jessica. Oh, she sounded surprised, then cautious. Okay, we'll be there. Daniel called with a similar concern. Is this about an inheritance thing? Like, are you setting up a will or something? Just come to dinner, Daniel. Please. Patricia texted. Is this going to be depressing? Because the holidays are hard enough without dealing with financial drama. I didn't respond to that one. The day before Thanksgiving, Caroline called. Eleanor, I heard you're having everyone over. I don't want things to be weird. Can I come? Now she wanted to come. Now that she'd heard from the family grapevine that I had something important to announce, suddenly she could rearrange her other plans. Of course, I said. Come at 3. I spent Thanksgiving morning cooking. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, rolls, 3 pies. Everything I'd always made for Thanksgiving. My house smelled the way it always did during the holidays, like warmth and family and tradition. But this year, the irony wasn't lost on me. They arrived within 20 minutes of each other just after 3. Jessica and Mark and their 2 kids, Daniel and Amy, Patricia and Tom. Caroline showed up last, carrying a bottle of wine like an admission ticket. The meal was awkward. The kids, bless them, were the only genuine presences at the table. They didn't understand the tension. They just enjoyed the food and asked their grandmother questions about the parade and football. I watched my daughter avoid eye contact with me. I watched my son check his phone repeatedly. I watched my sister make small talk with Tom as if I weren't there. After dinner, after the kids went to play in the other room, I stood up. Thank you all for coming. I know it's been a difficult few months. Jessica shifted in her chair. Daniel set down his phone. They were all looking at me now, waiting. I told you in September that I'd lost everything, that the company was gone, that I was facing bankruptcy. Nods around the table, sympathetic expressions that didn't reach their eyes. I need to tell you something about that. I paused, letting the moment stretch. Outside, through the dining room window, the late afternoon sun was turning everything gold. It was beautiful, and I remember thinking how strange it was to notice beauty in a moment like this. None of it was true. The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. What? Jessica said. I didn't lose the company. I sold it. 2 years ago, I began negotiations with Meridian Solutions. 4 months later, we finalized the sale. I sold Mitchell & Associates for $12.5 million. After taxes and fees, I walked away with just under $9 million. I watched the color drain from Jessica's face, watched Daniel's mouth fall open, watch Patricia grip the edge of the table, watch Caroline's wine glass slip from her hand, red wine spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. You lied? Mark said, his voice sharp. You lied about all of it? Yes. Why? Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. Because I needed to know who you all were without my money, and you showed me. That's insane, Daniel said, standing up. That's psychotic. You manipulated us. Did I? I told you I'd lost everything and needed support. Not money, just support, just family, just love. And every single one of you disappeared. We gave you space, Patricia said weakly. We thought that's what you needed. You stopped answering my calls. You canceled on me. You judged me. Jessica, you told people at your kids' school that I was financially irresponsible. Daniel, you emailed me saying you were disappointed in me. Patricia, you went on the cruise anyway. Caroline, you told people I'd shown my true colors. Caroline's face went white. You had me investigated? I did. I hired a private investigator. I needed to know if my instincts were correct. And they were. All of you. Every single one of you. The moment I couldn't be your bank anymore, I ceased to exist to you. Mom, that's not fair, Jessica said. We were dealing with our own problems. Problems I'd always helped you with. Problems that magically became insurmountable the moment you couldn't use me as your solution. Jessica, you've asked me for money 17 times in the last 5 years. Not once did you call me just to talk. Not once did you invite me to something unless it was a holiday where gifts were expected. That's not true. It is true. I have phone records. I have emails. I have a timeline of every interaction we've had. And do you know what they all have in common? Money. Either you were asking for it, expecting it, or resentful when you didn't get it. I turned to Daniel. You've started 6 businesses in 15 years. I've invested in every single one. Not once have you paid me back. Not once have you succeeded. And the moment I couldn't fund number 7, you decided the family energy was unhealthy. The only unhealthy energy, Daniel, was your entitlement. His face was red now, angry. You're my mother. You're supposed to support your children. Support, yes. Enable, no. There's a difference, and I failed to teach you that. That's on me. But the way you abandoned me when I supposedly needed help, that's on you. I looked at Patricia. 40 years. We've been sisters for 71 years, but we've been close for 40. How many times have I helped you? How many vacations have I paid for? How many bills have I covered? And the moment I needed emotional support, not money, just someone to talk to, you stopped answering the phone because you were hurt about a cruise. Patricia's eyes were wet. You don't understand. I'd been looking forward to it. And I'd been looking forward to having a sister who cared about me more than a vacation. Finally, I turned to Caroline. 38 years of friendship. I was there when you got divorced. I was there when your son was struggling. I paid for things I can't even remember because that's what friends do. And when I supposedly lost everything, you couldn't even spare an hour of compassion. You made it about the $5,000. You complained about having to split a coffee bill. Eleanor, I didn't know what to say. Caroline said, tears streaming down her face now. You'd always been the strong one, the successful one. And the moment I wasn't, I was no longer worth your time. The room was completely silent except for Caroline's crying and the sound of the kids playing in the other room, oblivious to the devastation in the dining room. So what now? Mark asked, his voice hard. You wanted to prove we're all terrible people? Congratulations. You did it. What do you want from us? Nothing, I said simply. I don't want anything from you anymore. That's the point. Mom, Jessica said, standing up. Mom, please, we made mistakes. We can fix this. Can you? Because I don't think you understand what you did. I didn't test you to be cruel. I tested you because I needed to know if the relationships in my life were real, and I found out they weren't. They were transactional. All of you loved what I could do for you, not who I was. That's not true, Daniel said, but his voice lacked conviction. It is true. And the saddest part is that I understand why. I enabled it. I taught you that my love came with a checkbook. I made myself into the family bank, and then I was surprised when that's all you saw me as. But knowing why it happened doesn't make it hurt less. So what, you're just cutting us all off? Patricia asked. After everything we've been through together? What have we been through together, Patricia? Really? Because looking back, I see a lot of me being there for you and not much of you being there for me. I've been there, she protested weakly. Name one time in the last 5 years where you helped me with something that didn't involve me helping you first. She couldn't. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. I looked around the table at these people I'd loved my whole life. Jessica, my daughter, who I'd given everything to. Daniel, my son, who I'd believed in endlessly. Patricia, my sister, who I'd thought would always be there. Caroline, my best friend, who I'd trusted completely. I'm 71 years old, I said. Richard has been gone 8 years. I spent those years building my business, supporting all of you, and telling myself I was creating a legacy of love. But I wasn't. I was creating a legacy of dependency. And when I supposedly couldn't provide anymore, you all taught me that the love wasn't real. Mom, please, Jessica said again, crying now. We can fix this. We can do better. Maybe you can, but I don't want to wait around to find out. I'm leaving. Leaving? Daniel said. What do you mean, leaving? I'm moving. I've bought a villa in Tuscany. I'm leaving next month. I'm going to spend my remaining years doing all the things Richard and I dreamed about. I'm going to travel. I'm going to read. I'm going to paint. I'm going to live. You're abandoning us? Patricia said, her voice rising. After putting us through this test, you're just leaving? I'm not abandoning you. I'm choosing myself. There's a difference. I walked to the credenza and picked up 8 envelopes I'd prepared. These are for each of you. Jessica and Daniel, you each have $50,000. Patricia, you have $25,000. Caroline, you have $10,000. Consider it a parting gift and payment for all the loans that were never meant to be repaid. I placed the envelopes on the table. Nobody reached for them. The house will be sold. My attorney will handle everything. The proceeds will go to various charities, organizations that help women start businesses, foundations that support financial literacy, places where money actually makes a difference instead of enabling dysfunction. You can't do this, Jessica said. I can, and I am. I walked toward the door. Caroline stood up. Eleanor, please, I'm so sorry. I'll do anything. Just please don't leave like this. I turned back to look at her, at all of them. Do you know what the worst part is? If this had been real, if I had actually lost everything, I would have needed you, not your money, just you, your presence, your love, your support, and not one of you was willing to give me that. We didn't know how, Jessica whispered. Then you should have learned. You should have tried. You should have cared enough to figure it out. I picked up my purse. Thanksgiving dinner is over. I'd like you all to leave now. They left slowly, in shock. Mark was angry, pulling Jessica toward the door. Daniel was pale and silent. Patricia was crying. Caroline lingered the longest, standing in the doorway like she wanted to say something that might change everything, but she had no words left. When they were all gone, when the house was finally quiet, I sat down at the dining room table with its spilled wine and half-eaten food and looked around at my life. It felt empty and full at the same time, empty of the people I'd thought I knew, full of possibility for what came next. 3 weeks later, I got on a plane to Italy. I'd sold the house. I'd said goodbye to neighbors and colleagues. I'd closed that chapter of my life. The villa in Tuscany is everything I dreamed it would be. I wake up to sunrise over olive groves. I've learned to make pasta from my neighbor Maria, who's 75 and speaks no English but communicates in gestures and laughter. I paint in the afternoons, terrible paintings that make me happy. I read books I never had time for. I walk through medieval towns and drink wine and eat cheese and remember what it feels like to be Eleanor Mitchell, not Mom or Sis or the family bank. Sometimes I wonder about them. I hope they learned something. I hope they grew. But mostly, I hope they understand that love without conditions is the only love worth having, and I've finally learned to give that love to myself. I got my justice not through revenge, but through freedom, and that, it turns out, is worth more than $12.5 million.